Amara Okafor never imagined that the final year of her university life would be the year everything she trusted would collapse. She was 22, a mass communication student in a federal university in Nigeria, and the kind of person people described as quiet but brilliant. Amara didn't talk too much. She didn't like trouble. She believed in hard work, patience, and minding her business. And above all, she believed that if you were good to people, they would be good to you. That belief would nearly destroy her. Amara lived in a small female hostel room with her roommate, Bisola Adeyemi. They had been roommates for almost 2 years. They cooked together, complained about lecturers together, borrowed each other's clothes, and shared secrets late at night when the hostel generator went off and the room was swallowed by darkness. Bisola was different from Amara in many ways. Where Amara was calm, Bisola was loud. Where Amara preferred staying in with her laptop, Bisola loved attention. She was beautiful, confident, and knew how to make people like her within minutes of meeting her. But Amara never saw Bisola as a threat. She saw her as family. That was her first mistake. Final year came with pressure, sleepless nights, and fear. For Amara, it also came with a project topic she was deeply passionate about, the influence of social media on political awareness among Nigerian youth. She had started working on it months earlier than most of her classmates. While others were still complaining about topic approval, Amara was already interviewing students, recording audio, organizing data, and writing chapter after chapter late into the night. Every evening, her hostel room became a quiet battlefield. Amara would sit on her bed with her laptop balanced on her knees, fingers flying across the keyboard, eyes burning from exhaustion. Bisola would lie on her own bed scrolling through her phone, occasionally throwing comments into the air. She often joked about how serious Amara was, how she would marry her laptop one day, and how final year was supposed to be enjoyed, not suffered. Amara laughed along, never suspecting that behind Bisola's jokes was growing curiosity and envy. Bisola watched Amara work every day. She watched her organize her files carefully. She watched her label her folders. She listened when Amara excitedly explained her findings. She nodded and smiled when Amara spoke about her interviews and theories. And slowly, without Amara knowing, Bisola began to memorize everything. Around the same time, Amara's relationship with her boyfriend, Daniel Kolu, started to feel strained. Daniel was charming and well-liked. He had met Amara in their second year, and they had grown close naturally. He used to admire her intelligence and discipline. But final year changed the rhythm of their relationship. Amara became busy. Really busy. There were days she couldn't pick his calls immediately. There were nights she cancelled visits because she had deadlines. There were moments she was physically present but mentally buried inside her project. Daniel understood at first. Or at least he said he did. But slowly, complaints crept in. He started saying she didn't have time for him anymore. That she cared more about her laptop than their relationship. That she was changing. Amara tried to explain that it was temporary. That final year would soon end. That she was doing all this for their future too. But while Amara was busy building her future, someone else was quietly positioning herself inside Daniel's present. Bisola. It started innocently. Or so it seemed. Bisola would casually ask Daniel how he was doing whenever she saw him around the hostel. She would tell him Amara was stressed and needed understanding. She would say things like, "She doesn't mean to ignore you, you know. She's just tired." Daniel appreciated it. It felt good to have someone who seemed to understand both of them. What he didn't realize was that Bisola was slowly rewriting Amara's image in his mind. She began planting subtle doubts. She would mention how Amara no longer talked much. How she was always locked inside her world. How stress was changing her. How she herself felt pushed aside by Amara lately. And Daniel listened. One night, after Amara had fallen asleep from exhaustion, something happened that would change everything. The hostel was quiet. The corridor lights flickered. Amara's laptop lay on the small table between the beds. Bisola sat up in her bed and stared at it for a long time. She told herself she just wanted to look. Just to understand how Amara's project was structured. Just to get inspiration. She stood up quietly, walked to the table, and opened the laptop. There was no password. Bisola's fingers trembled slightly as she clicked through folders. Chapter 1. Chapter 2. Interview recordings. Data analysis. References. It was all there. Weeks of work. Months of effort. And in that moment, temptation won. Bisola plugged in a flash drive and began copying files. She didn't stop until she had everything. The first crack appeared during project proposal approval. Students crowded the department, anxious and restless. Names were called. Topics were approved or rejected. When Bisola's name was called, Amara barely paid attention until she heard the topic. It was the same as hers. Not similar. Not inspired by. The same. Same title. Same variables. Same focus. Amara's heart skipped violently. At first, she tried to convince herself it was a coincidence. But as days passed and Bisola began working confidently on her project, Amara noticed things that couldn't be explained away. Bisola quoted theories Amara had discovered. She used examples Amara had shared only inside their room. She referenced interview patterns Amara had excitedly discussed late at night. Everything clicked. Her roommate hadn't just copied her topic. She had stolen her work. When Amara confronted Bisola, she expected denial, but not the kind she got. Bisola didn't shout. She didn't panic. She smiled. She said Amara was imagining things. She said topics could be similar. She said Amara was stressed and overthinking. When Amara asked to see her proposal, Bisola flipped the question around and asked why Amara didn't trust her. That question hurt more than the theft. Amara left the room shaking, unsure of what to do next. Reporting Bisola meant explaining how her roommate had access to her laptop. It meant questions. Doubt. Risk. And Amara hated drama. So she stayed silent. That silence nearly cost her everything. Things got worse when Daniel took Bisola's side. By then, Bisola had already told him her version of the story, how Amara suddenly accused her of plagiarism, how hurt she was, how she had always admired Amara. Daniel wanted peace. He wanted calm. And instead of digging for truth, he chose comfort. He told Amara she was overreacting. That sentence broke something inside her. Because betrayal hurts most when it comes from people you expect to protect you. The worst moment came on Project Defense Day. Amara sat in the room watching Bisola present confidently. Slide after slide displayed ideas Amara had birthed. Analysis Amara had written. Conclusions Amara had carefully crafted. The lecturers nodded in approval. Amara felt like she was watching someone else wear her skin. By the time the defense ended, Amara could barely breathe. That night, she cried alone in her hostel room, not just because her project had been stolen, but because she felt invisible. That was when something inside her changed. Instead of giving up, Amara decided to fight back. She returned to her laptop and began digging. Old emails. Backup files. Draft documents. Audio recordings. Timestamps. Everything. And there it was. Proof. Original interview recordings dated months before Bisola's submission. Autosaved drafts with creation dates. Emails sent to herself for backup long before Bisola even got her topic approved. For the first time in weeks, Amara felt hope. The confrontation that followed was brutal. In the supervisor's office, the truth unfolded slowly and painfully. Evidence was presented. Dates were checked. Files were compared. Bisola couldn't explain the timelines. Her confidence crumbled. Her lies collapsed. The verdict was clear. Academic misconduct. Plagiarism. Betrayal. The consequences came swiftly. Bisola was suspended. Her friends distanced themselves. Whispers followed her everywhere. The same confidence that once defined her disappeared. Daniel tried to apologize to Amara. He admitted he had been wrong. That he should have trusted her. Amara listened quietly. And then she walked away. Because some apologies come too late. Graduation day arrived months later. Amara stood proudly in her gown, surrounded by classmates, laughter, and camera flashes. She had survived. She had protected her dream. And most importantly, she had learned the painful truth. Not everyone who smiles with you wants you to win. Not everyone who sleeps beside you is your friend. And sometimes, the people closest to you are the ones watching for the perfect moment to take what you're building. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from people who know your passwords. Hear your dreams. And watch you work. Only to steal the reward when you're tired. Protect your dreams. Protect your work. And never assume loyalty just because someone is close.